illegal immigration. According to the Department of Homeland Security, over 10 million immigrants live illegally in the United States today. With recent discussion over the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which protects children who enter the country illegally from deportation, this topic is more relevant than ever before. So, should people who enter the United States illegally have equal protection under federal law? With the help of fellow students, we'll answer this question on this edition of Our Generation. I'm William Tyler. Hello and welcome, I'm William Tyler, and this is Our Generation. Today we'll be talking about immigration, and specifically we're going to start with deferred action for... No, I shouldn't have said that because I don't remember the acronym. DACA! We're going to talk about DACA. So I have with me two sides here who have different opinions. We're going to try to see if we can find something we both agree on. Okay, who would like to start us off with their opinion on DACA in the United States?
I'll start it off.
All right. Hello.
Okay. So, DACA is just so I'm clear here. It was the executive order that Obama signed that made it so that all illegal immigrant children that had been brought over by their parents, I don't know the exact age limit, were exempt from deportation, or were they given citizenship status?
I don't think they were given citizenship status, but they could apply to have their deportation deferred to a later time.
So my problem with DACA, I think that it's a horrible plight for these kids. They didn't choose to be brought over illegally. So I think in light of that, I think that we should deal with it case by case with each kid. My problem with DACA is that it was blatantly an unconstitutional act by Barack Obama. Because in 1876, in the Supreme Court case Luong versus Freeman, the Supreme Court voted unanimously that the legislative branch was in charge of immigration in America. So even though I understand that we have to probably treat these kids differently than we treat normal legal immigration, DACA is just a blatant unconstitutional act, and I would rather have that in the hands of Congress.
Well, let me bring up this point. Do we treat children any differently? I think we chastise them just on the basis of race. If you ever heard on the news recently, there was the tear gas attack, and these kids, they're innocent. They came to America for equal opportunities. They're here for the same things that we, I guess you could say, native-born Americans came for. We should all be united under what the United States of America stands for, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And we're treating them so horribly, and I think
Also, you said about deferring that action towards, are you suggesting deferring them towards an immigration court, or just having their case handled by immigration court?
I think that the immigration law should be made by the legislative branch, Congress, the Senate, and the House of Representatives, and that Obama signing an executive order to make DACA was unconstitutional. So whether I think DACA is good or not does not matter. As soon as something's unconstitutional, I don't care if I support it or not. I don't think it should pass. Now, if Congress passed some kind of law with DACA, I don't think we should blanket it by making all of these illegal immigrant children, citizens. I think that we should have a case-by-case scenario where some of the kids that have not contributed this to society and are being criminals should be deported, and that the ones that aren't should be put in the back of the line of legal immigrants who are actually trying to come here legally so they can reap the benefits of America. If you come here legally, in short, you should not be able to cut the line of all the legal immigrants who are coming. That's unfair to them. So I think, I'm not necessarily saying deport all of these immigrant kids, but I am saying that the people who are coming here legally should get priority over the people who are blatantly disregarding our law and staying in defiance of our law as well.
Well, it's not just priority, though. It's also, there are people who already started this process, but then instead of focusing on them and continuing their process for legal immigration, we're just now focusing all of a sudden, pulling in all the kids who are suffering from the DACA consequences for that. So it's not just like prioritizing. It's, there's a list, and whoever, first come, first serve.
You brought up the point of illegal immigration, but let me bring up this point. How did we all get here in the first place? We came here on the Mayflower. Just because now we have a rubber stamp system, it doesn't mean that they're any less qualified to be part of our country than we were in our starts. We came here seeking asylum just as they are now. I think there's no difference in that we're being hypocrites to our own time just because we have more fancy rights and more.
Also, logistically, with the case by case, I'm going back to this. I'm assuming that if it is case by case, so we go back to immigration courts, which are so extremely backed up right now. And also, secondly, these kids have stayed here their entire lives. I'm pretty they contribute to Social Security, they contribute to taxes, so they are basically Americans, but not in name, is what I'm trying to say. So it's just not fair to them to be dealing with the consequences of things they didn't choose to.
Yeah, I agree with that, but my problem again is that Obama blatantly disregarded the Constitution when he decided to sign the immigration policy and DACA into law. If a similar law, maybe not such a 100% all of these people are granted amnesty, citizenship.
But they're not granted amnesty. They're allowed to apply for DACA. It's not every single illegal child immigrant gets DACA status.
But it's still unconstitutional, and that's my biggest issue. You could run a very similar law through Congress, and I might have a few issues with it still, but I would be a lot more supportive of it if we followed the proper constitutional process of checks and balances.
For comparison's sake, the recent President Trump, threatening to remove birthright citizenship through an executive order, would you be against that?
I have a problem with that as well.
Okay.
Personally, with birthright citizenship, I think it actually is bad policy, but it has never been presented before the Supreme Court before to interpret the 14th Amendment. So if Congress, because they're the ones who have jurisdiction here, decides to pass a law that ends birthright citizenship, then the Supreme Court can decide if that's constitutional or not. Until then, I think that even if I support Trump's actions, I don't think that he should be able to usurp the Constitution's power in order to execute them.
Right. I'd just like to briefly bring up, you talked about how we came here seeking asylum. I want to remind the audience here that political asylum, people are seeking that coming here. That is a way of getting into the U.S. legally as well. It's not an illegal act to come here seeking asylum. It is legal to come here with that in mind. I wanted to say that.
So just going back to what you said, I totally get it. We all came here originally on the Mayflower. We immigrated here, and of course immigration is super important. But the thing is, now that we've been here, that we've come here for all different reasons, for all different sorts of freedoms, religious, political, and we have all these freedoms, and yes, everyone that wants to live the American life should be allowed to have that. The problem is we do have very limited resources here, and there's a lot of things going on. We can't just let everybody in now that we've been growing as a country. So
and that's not what we're not for suggesting at all. It's just the process is just the lines are just incredibly backed up. And I think there is a better way because there are people who have the skills, but they don't have the money, they don't have the education to, but they do have the American spirit. And I don't have a immediate suggestion on how to fix the way that we admit immigrants, but I do believe that it's something we should fix.
Well, I have one suggestion of how we could start fixing the immigration crisis on the border is to secure the border, to build a wall, to put visa tracking systems so people can't overstay their visas, which accounts for about 40% of illegal immigration. And that way, we're probably not going to end illegal immigration completely, but we can make it a trickle so that it's actually manageable, so that we don't have 11 million illegal immigrants in the country. And then we can start talking about immigration reform in other ways to make it easier for people to become legal immigrants.
But I don't think the wall is the best option to keep out illegal immigrants because we already have such a high border security down there, and it's just we have so many, because we have so many technologies, like there are sensors, there are thermal sensors, there's cameras, there are watchtowers, there are just so many, and that costs so much every year. I believe it's in like, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's in like the 49 billions or something like that, and then the wall will cost about $70 billion.
But by the time it would take to complete the wall, who knows, it's the immigration will keep rising, so if that's your fear, then it won't stop it in the time you too wish.
Okay, so if the border is already secure, then how come there is 11 million illegal immigrants in the country?
Because like as you said, they all most of them overstay their visas.
40% of them overstayed their visas, yes. And most of them are from like Vietnam or India. But most of the others cross the southern border. So I would say that it's not secure because of that. And according to the Federation of Immigration Reform, illegal immigration costs us about $135 billion a year. It costs taxpayers that much. So in hindsight, with that in mind, the wall doesn't seem like a huge cost. It seems like an investment.
I think we can be using our taxpayer money for far more better use, or we can put it to much better uses.
But also like, the maintenance of having a wall like that is just, it costs so much, and we already have natural barriers and also fences where there aren't natural barriers already.
But people are still getting through. The problem is I totally agree with it as an investment. Even though it may cost $70 billion, in the long run, economics curves, in the long run, in the long run, it might end up saving us so much more money, and with that more money, possibly purchasing more resources and then allowing more people to come in because we have more options for people to come in. So I think of it more as an investment. And yes, a lot of the arguments against the wall is, it's $70 billion of taxpayers' money, but it truly would be more of an investment.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you have a problem with like the cement wall, right? Would you support like sensors and stuff like in watchtowers along?
Because there
border?
are already like sensors and watchtowers on. I feel like that is enough, and I feel like there are other ways we can invest our money, not build an actual cement wall.
Right. And you say it's enough, but it seems that they're arguing that it's not enough. Would you say that their argument that 60% of the 11 million?
Currently.
11 million. I see.
That's what I've heard. It's probably growing.
Yeah, that they say that they
right. So you do think it's enough?
I don't exactly know all the numbers because, unlike you, I can't I'm not very good with numbers and with statistics.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I do think it's because I feel like there are other ways that people get around not necessarily because then I've watched so many things about like the border and how it's a small trickle. It's not exactly an extreme flow through, but I guess there are holes in our border. I agree with that, but I think the wall doesn't patch up that hole because it is just a wall. We can hire more border patrol if we wanted to keep out illegal immigrants. We can put in more infrastructure, but I don't think it should be just a wall that costs so much and that goes through natural barriers, which also harms the local ecosystems and separates like the some land disputes. Yeah.
Well, I would argue that walls do work though, because for instance, let's take Israel. Before they built a wall around their country, there was I don't remember the exact number. There was dozens of terrorist attacks happening almost weekly, and right after they built the wall, the terrorist attacks didn't stop, but they slowed down to a trickle. So I'm saying the same thing about the southern border. It's not going to stop illegal immigration completely, but it's going to make it more manageable so that we're not going to suddenly have 11 million people in our country again that are here illegally.
I'm not very familiar with the whole terrorist attacks with Israel before they built the wall, but was there any border or any person guarding that border between?
I'm sure there was. I don't know the exact thing, but Israel has a troubled history of war in the Middle East, so logically I would assume that they did have some kind of border security.
But I don't think it's as advanced as our border security right now. Because
I think the border security, if it's just people and sensors and stuff, it's going to be the same all around. I mean, a wall would really make a big difference. It's so much different than a person and will supply so much more of a protective barrier than just sensors and...
but there is already a fence up.
A fence.
But
Fence.
it's...
We're talking about
but,
a fence.
It's a very old fence that has a lot of holes and breaches in it, though.
Okay, it's very easy to bypass.
And a wall, it's just slightly more durable.
A 30-foot cement wall is more durable.
There's always ways.
Well, yeah, we're not saying there's not anyways, but it's a little bit harder, I think, than a fence. But that's just my opinion.
My biggest problem is how Border Patrol has been treating these immigrants. No matter, they're looking at them all as just illegal immigrants, so immediately they become intruders to our country. I think some of them, they're trying to help their children get a better life. We need better background checks rather than just looking at them and saying, go back.
Absolutely. The problem is, though, because there hasn't been a lot of management on this already, and we've allowed so many gang members to slip through our borders and stuff, we have to look at them. It's almost like we have to profile because, they could be a potential danger to the citizens that are here already. And so I feel like that's why, maybe they're being a little more hostile. Also, we really don't know what's going on down there because we're not. And news media is very biased, and so we have no idea if... like the wave of immigrants are provoking Border Patrol and whatnot. We don't really know both sides of the story.
Over the summer, I participated in a march against ICE, and I first-handedly saw the holding cells for those immigrants who came over, and I can officially say I've seen it with my own eyes that their treatment was cruel and inhumane and was completely against what our Constitution stands for.
What specifically was inhumane? Because when people break the law, they go to prison, and by definition, illegal immigration is breaking the law, and it's ICE's job to enforce federal law on immigration.
But legal immigration is also only a misdemeanor. It's not that. They shouldn't be held in inhumane
But what's inhumane about them specifically? I just want to know specifics, because if there is inhumane treatment happening, then I will fight it with you. But I need to actually hear specifics to be able to make a stand.
Women were being raped. Children who were still breastfeeding were stripped away, and they were locked in they were barricaded. Men, they were whipped. Some of them were brutally beaten. They were mutilated. Some of them to the point of no return. I think they're being penalized, and they're being grouped with a small percentage of those who are committing crimes.
Well, when they cross the border, they're committing a crime. I agree if that awful stuff is happening, like you say. I haven't heard anything about it, but if women really are being raped and children are being ripped away from their mothers and men are getting beaten near to death, then that needs to stop. But I haven't heard anything about that.
Well,
I can't...
This is a first-hand account from me.
You've seen women get raped?
Yes, it was in front of the holding cell. It was in Los Angeles, right in front of Los Angeles City Hall.
And who raped the woman?
It was the guards inside.
So those guards should be criminally charged, correct?
I'm surprised this hasn't gotten more media attention.
Yeah. Especially...
I'm sorry, I believe you, but then at the same time it's a little hard too, because I feel like something like this would have definitely gotten coverage just because of the horrible treatment. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
Well, it does get news attention. It's just buried between a plethora of other news events.
Right, so if it is true, they would, we agree that we need to reform that process, but still, the illegal people that are crossing legally do deserve jail, right? That's what you're arguing?
Not jail necessarily, but they need to be temporarily held so that they can be processed and then deported.
Right,
or
but
if
not-
they're seeking asylum, whatever the steps are
Then,
going to go from
yes.
there.
But not
Yeah, and
brutalized.
this is
It depends
like
if-
my point of bringing it with the immigration reform is that the courts are again like they're so backed up
They're
and
slow moving. They're not going to be able to sort through
Yeah.
everyone's individual stories.
so I feel like both of us can agree on the fact that we need to do something to reform our immigration. We may disagree on how and for whose benefit, but we both do agree that it needs for reform.
Well, I would say legal immigration makes those lines even slower because we're just trying to deal with illegal immigrants, so we can't let legal immigrants in because they're taking their positions. So when you are illegally entering this country, you are cutting the line of people who came here legally and are trying to assimilate and become Americans, and you are not contributing to society. You're not paying taxes. You're not entering into the social contract. You're reaping the benefits of the society without giving back, and you are taking away the opportunities of people who want to enter into the social contract. So I think illegal immigration, like, we can sympathize with them, but I sympathize even more with the people who are trying to come legally and have to wait because somebody cut the line.
And illegal immigration, like, if their life is truly in danger, I think they end up getting priority. So, like, I know you said, oh, it takes longer and then people can't come in, but people who are truly, I think, are in danger of for whatever reason end up getting priority, I believe. And so, like, those who can wait, if they're willing to, they could, technically, and it wouldn't be an issue for them if they really want to come here.
But also I'm not in any form supporting illegal immigration. Like, I do believe you have to get in line and.
Oh yeah, we know.
Yeah,
we get it.
But one of the things also is that under the Trump administration, I think the quota now is about 30,000. I think I need to check on that on that number.
I'm not
but
familiar with it either. So.
yeah, I think it's about 30,000 is the quota for 2017, I believe. So I think that's a problem, which also jumpstarts illegal immigration, and it's just that people just don't have the opportunity, they can't get in, so they resort to other ways.
And just like if you're poor and you can't get rich and you resort to other ways like robbery, you are criminally charged and you get in trouble. Just because you're desperate and you're resorting to other ways and illegally crossing the border.
But I don't think robbery and illegal
That's
trying
right.
to immigrate.
I think robbery is a more serious crime, but I'm just making a comparison that when you commit a crime, no matter the motive, you're going to get charged.
And if we don't uphold, our Constitution and go through with the punishments, then we're just going to become a society of chaos. And then
I think we've already gotten to that point if we're tear gassing children.
I think we should prioritize who we're deporting, because I think during Obama's administration, we mainly focused on criminal aliens. But as of now, we've also been trying to deport many people who have been residing in this country for decades, and we're exerting so many resources onto that. I feel like we should be focusing more on criminal aliens.
I agree, but I think to tackle all of that, we have to secure the border first. Mm-hmm. And then, I'm not saying deport 11 million people, possibly more. I'm not saying grant amnesty to all of them. I'm saying put them in the back of the line of people who are... It's fine. Put them in the back of the line of people who are trying to come legally, and maybe deport some of the people who are criminal.
Well, actually,
I can agree with that.
What I think they should do is focus on the 11 million people that are here, the 40% whose visas have expired. I think they should focus on them. And because they've been living here for God knows how long, mm-hmm. And if we can get them through the process, then and not moving along, it would be better. But focus on the people who have visas already and that are just expired.
Yeah, and going back into the immigration courts, this is a very passive subject for me, is that, again, there's just so limited resources for those courts. I believe there are only 52 immigration courts. Check me on that number. About 52 immigration courts in the U.S. as of now. So I believe you should put more resources into those courts and get people processed.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we could afford to put more into those courts if we weren't spending $135 billion a year on illegal immigration, though. Something to think about.
I mean, illegal immigrants also pay into Social Security and also taxes too.
Not all of them, because they're not citizens. So we don't have them on record. So I would say a lot of them are not paying taxes. They're just reaping the benefits of society without giving back. The United States, our social contract is based off of John Locke's idea of what the social contract was, where we give power and authority to the government, and then in turn they protect our rights. So power and authority, a part of that is paying taxes. When you have illegal immigrants who aren't paying taxes but are taking the benefits of society, then you have people who are usurping the social contract that we make. And it unbalances our society. And it's a drain on our resources to be helping people who aren't giving to us at all. Now, I'm not saying I don't sympathize with them again, but the United States is a country that has to focus on its own national interests first. We can't be the world's charity organization. As much as we want to be, we can try to provide what we can, but we have to focus on our own interests first.
Our own interests, our own people first, right? Yeah. I see. Rebuttal. No?
Let me ponder on that.
We can also go to a break, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we can go to a break. We'll be right back after this brief fade to black. Hello and welcome back. These are our closing thoughts on Our Generation. Does anyone have any final things they wish to say to each other?
Well, I think it was said during our brief little break, but I'm really happy that we were able to have an educated discussion. It's really nice to be able to talk with people without shouting at each other, and like Michelle said, bounce ideas off each other and strengthen our opinions about things.
Yeah, I said over the break you asked me what do I identify myself as, and I said I tend to lean more liberally, but I think what people often think is when they're addressed with that question, they think both sides, they think very extremist, while there's different levels and people are complex and there's different beliefs, and I might not agree with all of your sides, you may not agree with all of mine, but I think the beauty of our generation is that in this debate we weren't butting heads the whole time, but in fact we were trying to come up with solutions. By the year 2022, the millennial vote, yeah, we're being progressive. By the year 2022, millennials are going to exceed the baby boomer population. We just had our election. Obviously this group of 4 people statistically can't speak for the whole entire population, but I think if this trend continues, then I think we'll be able to cause a lot of change.
Definitely Gen Z will definitely cause a lot of change if we have more productive conversations like this. So we'll go ahead.
Because at the end of the day, what our views are is to think what's best for our country, and that's what our goal is at the end of the day. No matter how different our views are and how different our solutions are. Yeah, I think it's gotta remember that.
Mm-hmm. And in the morning, every morning, we always say the Pledge of Allegiance, and we always end with liberty and justice for all. We may have different ideas of that, but rather than just blurting it out mindlessly, I think we really need to think about what that means to everyone. All isn't just whether it's black, white, gay, lesbian, straight. It's all. We're all supposed to be unified under this country. I think there's room for improvement. There's more room for listening. I think that can change with our generation.
I just would like to say that I don't know how many of you are familiar with the words written on the Statue of Liberty, which are about immigration, which say, I'm probably going to misquote it, but, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Give these, the homeless tempest tossed to me. So, America was built on principles of liberty and freedom, and I think that it is our duty to share that with as many people as possible. So I'm very much in support of people who come to this country, emigrate here, and build a life for themselves and live the American dream and go from poverty to wealth. And I think it's amazing that we could have this conversation and that we can live in a country that
allows us to have this conversation.
allows that.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Yeah. I think the beauty of this, I know we're talking about immigration, a big part of it is this division of race, but in the end I think we're all just part of the human race.
Mm-hmm.
And we're here to support each other. We shouldn't be butting heads anymore. We need to come up with progressive ideas and put an end to, two extremes of what liberal and conservative means, what it means to be an American. I think we just need to be united under, humanity in general.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this was Our Generation on Immigration.